Bronze splinters. Sand turns to mud under the weight of the fallen. In ancient combat, death arrived in a heartbeat. But when he entered the fray, the momentum of the entire battle shifted. Thousands of men froze, watching a single figure cut through the Trojan line with the efficiency of a scythe through wheat. This was a world governed by the whims of Olympus, where the gods viewed mortal suffering as a spectator sport, moving armies across the map to settle their own petty grievances. Among those pawns, he stood as the ultimate piece, Achilles, leader of the Myrmidons, and the most lethal killer Greece had ever produced. His arena was Troy, a grueling 10-year siege that reduced cities to rubble and defined a generation of heroes. His power was hereditary. Born to a sea nymph, he possessed a divine vitality that elevated him above the fragile men bleeding out in the sand. To secure his survival, his mother carried him to the river Styx, the boundary separating the living from the dead, submerging him in its magical waters to forge an indestructible body. But as she held him, the water missed the exact patch of skin covered by her fingers, his heel. Thetis had tried to craft a god out of her son, but in her attempt to create an indestructible tool for the wars of Olympus, she left behind one small, organic reminder of his mortality. On the battlefield, he moved with the raw stamina and overwhelming physical strength usually reserved for heavy-hitting demigods like Hercules. Knowing his flesh couldn't be pierced dictated his entire strategy. He fought without a shield, rushing headlong into spears that simply snapped against his chest. Striking him felt like swinging a sword against a mountain. Their weapons bounced off harmlessly, yet no king could control him. He dictated the war's pace based on his own temper, sitting alone in his tent while his own people died, absolutely refusing to fight until his pride was properly satisfied. The Greeks called his obsession arete, the pursuit of personal excellence. Achilles made a calculated trade. He abandoned the prospect of a long, quiet life at home to secure a brief, violent, and immortal reputation. This single-minded focus turned him into an icon. He became the ancient model of martial perfection, frozen in history as a warrior who transcended humanity. But his impenetrable skin became a wall. While other Greek kings shared the risks of the trenches and the fear of death, Achilles watched the carnage from a distance, increasingly isolated by the very invincibility that defined him. When his closest companion was killed, that isolation shattered into pure, blinding rage. He demanded a blood sacrifice. He marched to the gates of Troy and singled out the city's greatest defender, Hector, for a duel to the death. The fight was an absolute execution. Achilles unleashed a brutal, overpowering, and relentless assault that completely dismantled the Trojan prince. Slaying Hector cemented his dominance over the mortal world. But in taking that vengeance, he tilted the cosmic scales too far, enraging the gods who had watched his rise. The screams of victory eventually faded, replaced by the heavy silence of the Trojan plains. Achilles stood over the body of his rival, unaware that his own thread was already being cut. The Olympians maintained a strict cosmic balance. True perfection belongs only to the divine. Mortals who overreach are always forced to pay a toll. Amidst the chaos of a subsequent skirmish, a single arrow, fired from a distance and guided by a god's hand, found the only vulnerable patch of skin on his heel. The most feared force in the Greek world collapsed into the dirt, killed by a wound that wouldn't have slowed an ordinary man. Achilles secured the immortal fame he bargained for, but his story remains a warning. No matter how thick the armor, we are all anchored to our hidden vulnerabilities. So what would your choice be? A short life of eternal glory, or a long life in the shadows? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the myths that shaped our world.